You're listening to the Mind Medicine Prescription Podcast, the show for conscious entrepreneurs who are ready to learn how to think differently, dissolve their limiting beliefs and patterns, and create a body, business, and life they love. I'm your host, Kimberly Denise, your go-to coach and mentor for all things mindset, microdosing, and manifestation. Over the past 2 decades in doing this work, I've personally used these principles and practices to manifest my soulmate, to quit my full-time job to be a mom and do what I love, which is teach people just like you how to design the life of their dreams, all from the inside out. If you're here, it's because something inside of you is telling you that there's more to life than what you've been experiencing, and your soul is ready for a software update. Consider each of these episodes a potent dose of medicine for the mind, as well as practical steps to take action on in your everyday experiences. I believe you came to the planet with a unique purpose and mission, and you're literally a frequency shift away from manifesting the life you've been seeing in your imagination. So get ready, because this could be the episode that changes everything for you. I'm so happy you're here.
Hello and welcome, soul friends and family. Kimberly Denise here. I was inspired to record this episode because I believe that in the day and times that we are in, that women all over the world are beginning to remember just how powerful they are. How powerful they are in mind, how powerful they are in body, physically, and how powerful we are in spirit. And so if you've tuned into this episode, you might be somebody who, maybe you're like me at this point in time. I'm just about 18 weeks pregnant. Maybe you're somebody who's thinking about conceiving. So you're doing your research, trying to figure out, what type of birth you want to have, or, maybe you are someone who has had a negative birth experience in the past and you're looking for ways to make it the most empowering experience moving forward in this new opportunity and experience that you want to create. Or maybe you are the partner of someone who is, expecting a child and you're here to get some information for them. That's very nice of you. But my intention in sharing this is just that you would walk away empowered, walk away thinking differently about yourself, first and foremost, your mind and how powerful your mind and your intentions and your energy can be, and thinking differently about birth in general, because I am a living testament of that, right? In several experiences, and in this upcoming experience, I plan to be as well. And I'll share my birth stories here with you momentarily. But I think it's so important because it's just another area of life that we've all been indoctrinated in, right? We've all been conditioned, we've all been programmed in so many different areas of life, and bringing human beings into the world just happens to be another one, right? There's so many different things. There's so much programming around food. There's so much programming around spirituality and religion. There's so much programming around the medical system and just at every single level of life, right? It's like someone, somewhere, a group of people, right, wants to control us and wants to control how we operate in our life. And they've done it in a way that has brought us away from nature. That's taken us away from the natural way of things. If you look how food is cultivated, if you look how medicine is given, and if you look how human beings are brought into the world, if you look at the birthing process itself, the birthing process today, especially in the United States of America, if you are where I am, which I'm here in the US, it's not what it once was. Let's say I think maybe like 1950s and before then, where there was a certain time period where women, it was completely normal. You were not weird if you wanted to have a home birth. You were not weird. You were not considered crunchy. You were not considered anything other than like, oh, that's normal. Like the whole midwife thing, the whole have it at home, have the baby at home in your home setting with a midwife, or maybe they even had doctors back then. I'm not even really sure. But I know that the majority of women were giving birth at home. And it always seems like when you go and trace, why did the system change? If you look and see why the system changes in any area of life, whether it's our food distribution or our energy consumption and distribution, religion and spirituality, the pharmaceutical industry, medicine, or birth, bringing humans into the world, it's always traced back to some kind of a profit, right? And so birth is no different. And so today we live in a factory birthing world where everything is set up in the hospital setting to be a factory birth experience, meaning there's a certain protocol that hospitals go by for women to give birth, not taking into consideration that every single woman is different. They have a different age, they have a different experience. Some women are experiencing their first births, some women are experiencing their third, fourth, or fifth birth, right? It's very well known that sometimes the first birth takes a lot longer than the consecutive births. Like the more births that you have, it seems like your body, if you're in a natural setting, your body remembers what to do. And a lot of times, and at least from my experience, this has been true, is that your birth process goes a little faster, a little simpler, a little easier even. So they're not taking all these things into consideration, and they have created a blueprint where they want women to just fall into a cookie cutter factory blueprint experience of birth. And so this is why there's so many different cesareans happening, and the majority, the statistics are out, if you get into the natural birthing world, that the majority of cesareans that happen are actually unnecessary. They're actually caused by the medical doctors. They're caused by the OBGYNs. They're caused by the interventions, the unnecessary interventions that they're giving to women in the hospital when they go in to have birth, right? So I'm going to start off with talking about my first birth experiences, and I'm so grateful now that I have had several different quality of experiences, because I can compare and I can now be like, yeah, I've been in both worlds and I know what it's like, right? So my very first birthing experience was, I was just 20 years old, right? And I picked up there's a book called Natural Birthing, the Bradley Way, or something like that, right? And back then when I was young, I wasn't really committed to my education and my development, and in the relationship that I was in, I was under a lot of stress. It was a very toxic relationship. A lot of you know my story. But long story short, I didn't study that thing. I did not study the book. I read a little bit, and I didn't have a helpful partner either. So that didn't help as well, because the Bradley method requires a very helpful, supportive partner. Anyway, so I went into the hospital to have my baby because my water broke. That was the first sign of birth. And we're like, oh my God, this baby's going to be born. We have to get there. I remember us speeding to the hospital. This was in my previous marriage. We were speeding to the hospital, trying to get there as fast as we could, thinking the baby's going to be born in the car and everything, right? And I know now that that's not always the case. Sometimes your water breaks and water could be gushing out of you. It doesn't mean the baby's going to come right out. And that's exactly what happened with me. So we got to the hospital, and what I know now is that I was right away put into an environment that I was not comfortable in. I was already going through a lot of stress. I was going through so much emotional and mental turmoil in my home life. And then once I got into the hospital setting, it just increased that stress. And my whole the whole experience was increased, the stress increased of that whole experience, because I didn't know what to expect, and because I was afraid, and because I wasn't prepared, because I wasn't educated. And I also, I didn't know that I actually had any type of rights. I didn't know that I could decline anything. I didn't have anyone there to help me or to show me or to tell me that, like, hey, some of these things that they offer women, actually a lot, if not most of the things that they offer to women, a woman who's in labor, is, for the most part, if you're a healthy woman, it's unnecessary. And not only that, but it interferes with your body's natural process of giving birth. So for me, for an example, I roll into the hospital, they get me in the bed and everything. They put an IV in my arm, right? And so that's the very first intervention, quote unquote intervention, a lot of people might think, well, no, you need an IV, right? They need to make sure that you're hydrated. They need to make sure that if they need to give you anything under an emergency, that it's easily, they can easily do that, right? But what you don't know is that, the moment that they plug that IV into your arm, they're diluting your bloodstream with these electrolytes and this solution, right? Mineral electrolyte solution, whatever's in there. And so that's diluting your own blood supply, the hormones that are happening, that your body's creating in your blood supply. So this slows down birth, right? So everything that the hospital does, it slows down the natural birthing process. And then this is the whole problem, reaction, solution that's in every single level of control, right? So they create a problem. They're slowing down your body's natural ability to give birth by diluting the chemicals that your body's making, so your body has to work harder. And then what do? They notice by monitoring your contractions and your vitals and the baby and all this stuff, they say, oh, the birth is slowing down. Now, in the back of their mind, they have a protocol to follow. A hospital is a business. A hospital is it's a factory. It's to get people in, it's to perform surgeries, it's to give people medications and get them out, right? And with birth, it's the same thing. It's not about, let's bring all these women in here and let them stay for as long as they want and we'll take care of them and all this stuff. It's not anything like that. There's a certain time protocol. There's a certain time that they want you to start giving birth, basically, by the time you're checked in to the time that you start having your short contractions. There's certain different markers, what do you call that? I'm trying to think of what the word is exactly. It'll come to me. But anyways, and a lot of these things I didn't know, and I learned from not only watching the documentary. If you haven't seen this film, you have to go and watch it, especially if you're somebody who's having your first birth. It's called The Business of Being Born, and I believe that there's a second one also. But this is the movie that I watched after having a very traumatizing experience, which I will continue to tell you about, and learned all these things from. But that is a great film that I learned so much from, and also gave me a lot of things to go out and research. Because, don't believe me in anything I'm saying here. Don't believe anything that you see in the film, but actually go do your own research and dig deep and find the answers and listen to your own intuition and see what is right for you, right? So anyway, I've got an IV. They're pumping me full of the solution. And the next thing is, they want to give me the Pitocin, which is the medical version of oxytocin. So our body produces this hormone called oxytocin, which is, a lot of people call it the love chemical, right? The love molecule, love chemical, and it enhances our body's ability to give birth, our body's ability to create the contractions. It's like the main chemical that deals with the birthing process. But the hospital version is not the same. It's not equal, right? And a lot of times, just like many other pharmaceuticals, the copycat version of what the medical industry or the pharmaceutical industries create is not very helpful, and it's unnatural to a level that it makes the whole process worse, which it does with birth. So what the Pitocin does is they give it to you to speed up birth, right? And they give it to you so that way, because they gave you the solution, it's slowing the birth down, then they give you the Pitocin, that's supposed to speed up the birth. But what does that mean exactly? What does speeding up the birth mean? Well, it's making your contractions stronger and more powerful, right? Because what is the birthing process? What's happening in your body? And this is something you really have to contemplate. And this would be the very first step. Because a lot of times, even in school, we're not even really taught, how is a baby actually birthed? No one really knows how a baby's created in your body. We just know there's an intelligence that grew that baby for you. There was never a time where you had to stop and be like, I'll be right back. I gotta focus on creating the baby's spine today. No, there was an intelligence inside of you that formed the baby for 9, almost 10 months in your womb. You didn't have to think about it. You just had to do your part, eat healthy and stay active and drink a lot of water and do all that kind of stuff. But you did not have to consciously create that child, right? So logic would also tells me, this was my thought process once I started really thinking about this, right? that the same intelligence that knows how to form the baby, grow the baby, right, create the baby, the miracle, right, the miracle of life, would also know how to bring the baby into the world, aka birth, right? So the mother's womb, the uterus has muscles. It's like a bag of muscles. When it's time to birth, these chemicals are created to alert the body or the brain and send signals to the body, which is the womb, to begin contracting or can begin shortening, right? Pumping, for lack of a better word, to help the baby, escort the baby not only into the right position, but then escort the baby out of the body, right? Through the birth canal. And so the body knows how to do this. But when the hospital gets involved and starts giving us all these different things, so they gave me the Pitocin, and then that started speeding things up quite a bit and very severely. Like the contractions that I was having before was nothing compared to the contractions that I began having. And here's one of the things that I want to highlight. One of the first things I want to highlight is that if you've had a birth experience and you have experienced contractions in the hospital from these interventions, you don't know what natural birth feels like. And that's something that a lot of women don't realize, is that there is an experience that is natural birth, and there's an experience that is hospital birth, and they are not the same. The feelings the sensations that you have, the quote unquote pain, the discomfort, right? The pressure, whatever label you want to put on it, it is not the same. It is way worse when you're under their care. It is way worse when you are being given all of these things. Because why? Because it's unnaturally altering your system, right? And so my pain went through the roof, right? And I was very adamant about I'm not having an epidural. And I actually chose at the age, this might sound kind of funny, but I chose at the age of 3 that I would not have an epidural during my birth. And the reason why was because my older brother, I don't even know how old he was at the time, but he was old enough to where he had a friend, right? He had a friend who had a baby, and there was a horror story that I kept hearing repeat in my family, overhearing these grown-ups talking about how, I think her name was Sonia. Sonia became paralyzed from her epidural during her birth. And I just remember hearing that as a kid, and I was like, no epidural, check. Like, I'm not even going to do that thing, whatever that is. I don't even know what that is. I'm a kid, I'm a little girl. I don't even know. Like, I'm not going to have babies for years and years and years. But I knew, like, in my subconscious mind, it got programmed that I'm not going to do this thing called epidural. So, of course, I that was one thing that I did tell them. I said, nope. And of course, they offered it to me. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And so I go into this horrible experience, this horrible, painful experience of what I know now is, I'm resisting what's happening in my body. I don't know how to breathe and relax. I don't know how to meditate. I don't know how to work with my body, or really just what I know now is allow my body to do what it knows how to do and just kind of step back. Because really that's what natural birth is all about, is knowing and trusting your body to a level to where you can not so much have an out-of-body experience, but you're kind of stepping aside and your only work is to relax, to step aside, and to really control your responses and your reactions to the sensations that you're feeling in your body. But just know that there is an intelligence in my body right now that knows exactly what to do to bring this baby from inside of my body to outside of my body. And I don't have to do really anything other than what I'm inspired to do. If I'm inspired to get down on the floor and stretch, then that's what I do. If I'm inspired to, I feel like I want to go for a walk, then that's what I need to do. If I need to lay down, take a nap, drink some water, have a bite of fruit or something like that, that's our only job, is to do what we're inspired to do, what feels innately driven and inspiring to do. But other than that, it's to relax as much as possible, to breathe, and to step aside and let our body do what it knows to do. And I didn't know that. Okay, so I'm laying there just in agony, literally, like at the worst point of the experience. I literally thought I was going to die. I literally thought, I am experiencing so much pain. It was beyond the point of any epidural, even if I changed my mind. And there were so many things that happened and so many different interventions that came through that I'm actually really lucky. I'm really lucky that they didn't put me in to go and have a cesarean because my baby, when she was born, she was in distress. I didn't even get to hold her when she was first born. They took her out. They did the suction thing and everything like that. They said she's in distress. We have to take her to the I think the NICU or whatever. And so my husband at the time, he went with her over there and was able to like observe and everything, but I didn't even get to hold her. I didn't get to do that first bonding moment. So there was so much that was traumatizing, not only for me, but for my baby coming into the world, all because, I didn't know how all of this worked. And little side note, the only reason why I wasn't sent in to have a cesarean was because somehow, some way, the divine intervention, right? The nurse that was working with me during my birth, she was a traveling nurse that happened to be in that hospital and assigned to this, birthing place in this hospital, birthing ward or whatever. And her whole background, though, and experience had been working with midwives. So she she knew all the little tricks. She knew all the little, here, let's do this, move this way, do all these things. So I actually got really blessed in having her there by my side. It was like God knew, like, okay, this girl's gonna need some help. I'm gonna send this nurse over here to help her. But it's gonna be a learning experience for sure, right? And it definitely was. I remember even saying, like, after it happened, like, I was so relieved, first and foremost, that the whole thing was over. 21 plus hours later of no sleep, pure agonizing pain, pretty much the whole entire time. I would say within hours of getting to the hospital, I was in pain. I was in uncontrollable, agonizing pain with nothing for it, right? And so I remember saying, I'm not having any more kids. I will never, ever, 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 ever get pregnant again or have another child. And here I am. I'm pregnant with baby number 7 today. So obviously some things changed in between then, and some things happened, and that actually, I didn't keep that promise or that declaration, right? But anyways, so what I learned, through the documentary and through my experience of researching was that, the system is not set up for us to thrive or succeed. The system is not set up for us to be autonomous in any way or experience our body's natural birthing mechanisms in any way, right? And so we have to become aware of not just what the hospital birthing experience is, right? But we have to become aware of our consciousness. How does consciousness work, and becoming aware of how does this universe work, and how do my thoughts and my mind work, and how am I able as a creator to create my own reality and manifest outcomes in my reality. We have to begin learning about our personal power. We have to begin learning about this intelligence that's within us. Contemplating that miracle of a baby is formed without our intervention, without us doing anything at all. So why is it that we trust, for the most part, because there are a lot of checkups and all these different monitoring things and all these scans and all this stuff that the traditional Western medicine will tell you to do when you're pregnant, right? Which you also don't have to do. That's another side note. But for the most part, we don't have to intervene or anything, right? The baby. But it's not that easy, and there are so many roadblocks that are put up for us as women in this world, and especially in this country, because of the medical system that we are immersed in, that we're influenced by, right? And so that was my first birthing experience. My second one was not as traumatic. My second one, I actually found a team of midwives that worked with the doctor that I had at the time, not the same doctor from the first one, but I got another doctor, and then I found a team of midwives that could attend my birth. And it was still in the hospital though. So my next 2 births with baby number 2 and 3 were in the hospital, but they were attended by midwives, and they had a backup doctor in case, any emergencies happen. But this is the point that I was able to actually exercise a lot of my newfound knowledge, the things that I didn't want, the things that I did want, the things that I was not available for at all, and they were very respectful of that, right? Now, how I would compare the second and the third to my first is that the environment was still uncomfortable, because I don't care who you are, but I don't know, I've never met anybody that said, I love going to the hospital. It's so comfortable and so amazing and so it feels so great, right? And so the first thing that hinders our ability to have an autonomous, sovereign, and natural birth, and therefore a potentially pain-free birth, a potentially meditative birth, a lot of women have orgasmic births, a peaceful birthing experience on our own terms, is the environment. And I compare it a lot of times to a psychedelic experience, right? If you've ever had a psychedelic experience before, if you've heard about them, the set and the setting are the most important foundational aspects of your experience. If you have the wrong set and setting, and what that means basically is the mentality and where you're at mentally and emotionally, and then where you're at in your environment. So if you are, you're feeling depressed and you're feeling like you shouldn't even be on the earth, and then you go to some party or rave or whatever, and you're taking 3 grams of mushrooms, you're probably not going to have the best mushroom experience that you could possibly have, right? Whereas if you go to, you might be feeling off mentally and not really inspired and not your best mentally, but you go into an environment where there's an educated, experienced guide. You're doing it in a ceremonial environment. You're doing it with a small group of people who all have similar intentions. We're very supportive of each other, and there's music, and there's a comfortable environment curated, and there's all these different things. The experience that you're going to have is much different than the first one, right? The one at the rave, or the one at the party, or the one just doing it casually with a bunch of friends and music and craziness, right? So our set and setting also matters for birth, right? So the place that we give birth, the environment that we're in, our ability to feel safe. And one of the women that I studied when I was looking into the subject of not just natural birthing, but free birthing and unassisted birth, which is just like wild birthing, like giving birth by yourself, like no midwife, no doctor, just you're going to give birth at home by yourself, usually with your partner if you have a partner, right? Which is what we did on one of our later births, and I'm going to tell that story as well. But, cultivating an environment where you're comfortable. Because what this woman said, her name is, by the way, Laura Shanley, and any of the resources that I talk about in this episode, I will put down into the show notes below, that we can go and look at the resources yourself. But she explains birth as it's actually a sexual experience. And I had never thought about it that way before. And when you really think about it, it's very personal. And it has to do, I could see how it would be sexual, because it's coming out of your most private and your most intimate parts, right? And who really wants to, go and spread their legs in front of several people that they don't know, whether they're a medical person or not? You know what I mean? It's like, what she says is, if the baby was created between you and your partner, then the birth should happen between you and your partner. You should have the privacy to make any sounds that you want to make, to be in any position that you want to be in. You can be on your hands and your knees with your butt in the air, or whatever you want to do, right? If that's what's most comfortable for you. Sorry to the dudes that are listening to this, if you're listening to this on behalf of your wife or whatever, this is the reality, right? But if you're in a hospital, you have to lay on your back, and they limit you on your movement and everything, especially if you have that IV in your arm, because you can't really walk around too far, and just all these different things, right? So the set and setting would be the first and foremost thing that we need to consider in how we're going to curate the environment that we're going to give birth in, and creating a serene, a peaceful environment, and really thinking about how and where would I feel the safest, under what conditions would I feel the safest to have this experience in, would be something to consider, right? So my second and third experiences were a lot less traumatic. They were still traumatic because of the fact that I was with the partner that was unsupportive. I was still in the toxic relationship. I still had a ton of emotional and mental trauma and baggage that I had not yet to work through or release, all from childhood, and then also from my adult years that I was in. At this point, I was 22 and then 24. When I had those two births, my children were 2 years apart. So 20, 22, 24 was when they were born. And so that's the next thing that I want to highlight, is that our mental state, and this kind of relates to the whole set and setting thing. Like we talked about the setting with the environment and where do you want to give birth, but also the set, like where are you in your mind? Asking yourself, how am I doing in my mental health? You know, what have I done? What kind of work have I done to really work through the fears that I have around birth and any subconscious conditioning or programming that I've been told that birth is a certain way and it looks like this and it looks like that. And, because look around, like everything that we see in movies and on TV and for the most part in real life, we hear women tell their birth stories about how it was so horrible and terrible and scary. And we're made to believe that like birth is this emergency situation that we have to go and get a doctor's help for because, oh my God, you might die, your baby might die. It's scary. Oh my gosh. And while it can be a high risk experience for those who are a high risk person for various reasons, it doesn't have to be that way for everyone, right? And it usually isn't that way for everyone. And so your set of doing the work, while you're pregnant, of, emotional release, working through traumas of the past, working through childhood traumas, doing inner child healing work, doing work, nervous system regulation, doing subconscious reprogramming, doing these types of things that are going to help you to release and let go a lot of the energetic baggage that we have. Because if and when you do not address these things, a lot of these things do manifest in the birthing experience, especially the fears around birth. A lot of times, in any aspect or area of life, it's very easy to manifest what you fear. There's a quote that I love. It's from Andrew Carnegie. He said, basically, anything that you fear or revere will clothe itself in the most appropriate form possible. And what that means is that because fear is magnetic, love is magnetic as well. But fear is like this magnetic force that pulls to us the experience that we're dreading and that we're fearing, right? And so if we're fearing that this might go wrong or that might go wrong or this might happen in our birth, and we're not sorting that out either amongst ourselves, with our partner, with a coach or a mentor or somebody to really see, is this true? Does this have to happen? Is this really a chance of happening during my birth? Just going through every fear that you have is going to be really helpful, because that's going to affect your set. And it's going to affect your overall set and setting and your environment in your birth experience, right? So we want to address the emotional side. We want to address the mental side. And a lot of people, I was never taught how to do any of that. Anytime I went to a doctor's appointment, anytime I went to an OB appointment, anytime even that I went to the midwives, they didn't counsel me or give me any type of therapy session or anything in regards to like how I was feeling. Now I do remember they were asking questions about, they asked general mental health questions or whatever, but nobody really dug around to find, is there anything that might cause a complication during this birth process? And I firmly believe that if we have things that are stuck within us that we haven't sorted out, that it can come through in the birthing process, right? So that's something else to look into. So those birthing experiences were all right. I had more autonomy, I had more freedom, I had more sovereignty in my choices other than the place that I gave birth. I didn't want to give birth in the hospital, but I had no other choice, right? And so I had this dream of having a free home birth, right? I'm like, if I ever have another baby and if I ever have the chance, I would love to have a free birth. And I remember seeing like birth stories on YouTube, seeing these women give birth peacefully in these bathtubs and these pools and all these things. And I was like, basically I put it in my visual vision board that, one day once I separated from the marriage that I was in and I had in my mind, there's an opportunity that I might form a new relationship. And if I do have any more children in the future, that I want to have this home birth, right? And so fast forward to 2015, that's exactly what happened. So, Shawal and I, we got together actually in 2013, but 2015, we had our first baby together, and I was like, here's my opportunity. I get the opportunity. Not only was I educated and I was confident And I was also financially equipped. I'm like, we have the money, like we can pay for this midwife and let's do this. So we did. We hired a midwife and we had a good experience. It was interesting because when it happened, it was one of the fastest labors. It was the fastest labor that I had up until that date. And the midwife almost didn't get there. And so long story short, I wasn't able to blow up the pool like I wanted to do. I was able to at least fill up my bathtub, and I gave birth to her in our bathtub. And it all happened in less than 5 hours, literally. And she almost didn't make it there. She made it there like right before, as we were like filling up the tub. I got in, literally 30 minutes later, the baby was born. That was it. And I remember Shawal, he made the comment. He's like, after the midwife left and everything like that, because, midwives aren't cheap. They're like $4,000 for everything, which is understandable. Everything, all the services that they're warranted, right? They deserve that. All the amazing work that they do for women. But I remember him telling me, like, we could have done that ourselves. And I remember thinking he was crazy. I was like, what? Like, no, you're crazy. We could never have birth by yourself without anyone. I remember thinking, like, that's how I automatically responded, right? I didn't think anything of it. It was just kind of like a statement that he said and a reaction that I had that was like stored away into my memory, right? And so a couple of years pass by, we get pregnant again. We have our second pregnancy, and we're going to have our second child. And at this time period, we were in an interesting place of, just long story short, we got really burnt out in the business that we were in, and financially not doing all that great. And here I am, I'm in it's like June, July, August is rolling by, and I'm due in November, and I don't know where I'm going to give birth. We technically don't even have a place to live where we're at this time. There was a time period where we did nomad life, where we were just traveling for his MMA career. So we were traveling amongst, first we were in New Mexico, then we went to Arizona, and then it was Vegas. So we're going to these different MMA gyms for his training, so that way he can train with these different gyms and stuff like that. So at the time we were in Las Vegas, and we were staying in vacation rentals and Airbnbs, which was great to be able to afford that kind of an experience, But as far as having that extra $4,000 laying around, we didn't have it at the time. And so I'm just like, I don't know how we're going to give birth. I don't know where. I don't know what's going to, in my mind, I'm like, the hospital's out of the question. Like, I'm not going to go do that. Sure, I could go and apply for like a state insurance, but even at that point, I really couldn't, because I didn't have any residence. Like, I technically didn't live anywhere. So I couldn't have got on like the free insurance or the government insurance or anything like that, to my knowledge. Like, this is what was going through my mind. I was like, I'm not gonna be able to get that insurance or anything like that. Not only that, but our car had literally, like, several months before, had just got totaled in a flood. So we were using like Uber to get everywhere and go everywhere. I'm like, that's not convenient. Like, I'm not going to take Uber everywhere, and that's going to add up, and just all these things were up against it, right? And so it's like, it must have been like September when I came to this conclusion, and I'm up late on my computer, and I'm doing research, and I come across unassisted birthing, and I'm like, what is this? And I start watching the videos. I'm pretty sure it was on YouTube that I started watching. Like, all these women are just having birth by themselves. They're just having birth. They're just giving birth in their home, just them and their partner. And it's like all working out perfectly for them. And I was like, and then I remembered what he said. I remembered him saying, we could have done that ourselves. And then me laughing at him, being like, oh my God, you're crazy, or whatever. And then that memory literally came out of nowhere from 2015 into my mind. And I was like, oh, we could do it ourselves. And so I literally stayed up all night that night, and I did research and questions, and I had all these concerns. I was just researching everything and watching all these videos and reading these things and listening to everything that I could, and basically just like really binging on all the information I could find. And I just knew within myself, I was like, this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to just have the baby here. We're supposed to just have it here in this house. We can do it in the bathroom. There was a garden tub just like the previous apartment that we had been in. And so I told him, I was like, hey, let's just have this baby ourselves. Let's just do an unassisted birth. And I started to show him all the information. And of course he trusted. We were both just luckily very aligned together with it. We just felt like that was the right thing for us to do. And luckily it turned out to be the most beautiful experience that we had ever had, both as a couple, but myself as a birthing woman. Like, it was the most empowering. It was the most peaceful. Now, it wasn't the shortest or easiest birth that I had had. And the reason for that, I believe, is because I was under a lot of stress at that time. I was under a lot of stress. We were like I said, it was in an in-between time where finances were like, they were good, but they were also like really tight. And then relationship issues and just so many different things. And I didn't know about the set and setting. I didn't know about the mentality stuff. I was just learning about, really starting to get into my manifestation and my universal law study and all these things. Back then, this was in 2017. And so I had a little bit of a longer labor, but to sum it up, it was a great experience, right? Everything happened. Baby came out peacefully. We both felt like amazing. Like, we're like, wow, we really just did this together. We allowed this amazing, miraculous event to happen. We did it together, and it brought us closer and everything. So it was beautiful. And what that showed me was that, just the power of intention, the power of the mind, because I had so many things that I had to, in a short period of time. It wasn't like, oh, let me prepare for this for 9 months. In, pretty much less than a month, I had to prepare myself. And I remember just out researching my fears. And I tell women that I speak to that are considering this is that you have to address literally every fear that you have, and you have to go and research that statistic. You have to go research that possibility, right? And then not only be aware and prepared, but to prepare for the worst in a way that you're not expecting it. And it's a weird thing. It's like, you don't want to prepare for the worst and then be afraid that it's going to happen and just be so concerned. You don't want to be in that state. You want to be in expecting the best, trusting your body, reiterating within yourself and and this is why meditation and visualization and even hypnosis are tools that I picked up along the way. In 2015 with my first home birth, I studied with the Hypnobabies program, and hypnosis is, I highly recommend self-hypnosis and guided hypnosis for birth. If you can do that somehow, highly recommend that. But it's the mind is so powerful, and you can literally overcome any type of insecurity, any type of worry, any type of concern that you have for your birth. You can overcome it through the power of your mind, right? And you can literally visualize your birth. Like what I'm personally doing right now is I'm visualizing, and I'm going into what I call the theater of my mind all the time. And I'm visualizing, like, I know exactly what it feels like in my body to have a baby by now, baby number 7. But I'm going in and I'm doing mental rehearsal, and I'm going through every single step, and I'm allowing it to play out exactly how I want it to play out. From the time that I start feeling the contractions, from the time that I get into the pool, from the time that I'm doing movement and sound and whatever else that it is that I'm inspired to do. And then I'm envisioning, allowing the baby to emerge out of my body peacefully, right? With the least amount of pain possible, which is very possible. Because pain is just a signal that the brain sends to the body. And if you're learning how to control your mind, and especially with hypnosis, like there's people who have had dental procedures done with no anesthesia, all thanks to hypnosis. So don't underestimate the power of the mind and of hypnosis. Like you can overcome anything. But so I'm using that as a tool right now currently. But what that taught me is just how powerful our body is. And what enabled me to have it was that idea that I spoke of in the very beginning, was that the same intelligence that knows how to form the baby in our womb knows how to bring the baby out. And that's just pure truth right there. It's just pure truth. And you have to contemplate that, and you have to think about that, and you have to meditate on that, and know it until it becomes a knowing of like, yeah, I know, like it just makes sense. Like the same intelligence that knows how to digest my food knows how to bring the food out of my body, right? Like I don't need help. Like I don't need to call a doctor every time. Doctor, I gotta go to the bathroom. Like, no, you just go in the bathroom and your body you just let your body do what it's got to do, right? Unless you have some kind of digestive problem. I hope you don't. But for the most part, right, that's what it is. It's hands off, right? And so this is a natural process. Birthing is a natural process that our body knows exactly how to do. And if we can address the set and the setting, if we can go into the subconscious mind and find, where's the programming and the conditioning that needs to be cleaned up? What are my beliefs is the next thing that I want to highlight, is our beliefs affect everything in our life. They affect our finances, our relationships, our health, our well-being, and then they also affect our birth. So whatever you believe is possible for you during your birth experience is what will be possible. If you don't believe that pain-free birth is possible, if you don't believe that a peaceful birth is possible, if you don't believe that a quick birth is possible, if you don't believe that whatever birth, put in the fill in the blank with whatever you believe is possible or don't believe is possible, then that is your guideline for what can happen inside of your experience. And it also goes for negative beliefs too, right? If you are making yourself available for emergency situations and you're I'm going to say this because this is just how I am, right? I didn't pack any type of emergency bag just in case I had to go to the hospital. I didn't say, well, just in case I got to call 911, I'm going to have all this stuff ready. I didn't do any of that because that would tell me in the back of my mind that, this is a possibility for me. I said, no, that's not a possibility for me. And, I make sure that you are, quote unquote, low risk, make sure that you don't have any, health complications that can put you in that position where you need to go to the hospital. Right. But I didn't do any of that. So that's just an example of something that I did not do. I did not prepare for the worst in that way, in a physical manner. You do want to prepare yourself for knowing how to deal with various different complications or things that a lot of the complications are not even really that big of a complication. And there's things to do, if the cord, with our birth, the second one, the first unassisted birth, the cord was around our son's neck. He came out and Shoel just, removed it and everything was fine. But a lot of people panic about that and think that that's an emergency and a reason to call 911, all these things, right? And, at the end of the day, we're all trying to protect our children and our babies and our wives and whatever. So no judgment there anyways. But, so our beliefs have everything to do with what is possible for us. And if we want to create a new possibility, we have to form new beliefs and we have to practice those beliefs and we have to support those beliefs with evidence, right? You can support your beliefs through watching birth stories and listening to birth stories through podcasts. And, you're here listening to this one and you can go and read books, or you can go and watch birth stories, or go and talk to women who have had these natural experiences, go into Facebook groups or other communities and provide evidence for yourself. Because the more evidence that you have that it's possible, the firmer and stronger your belief will be. And this is how we build beliefs, right? We look for evidence. And this is the way that the brain works too, right? Your brain is always looking for evidence in your environment or in the world to prove that what you believe is true. Whether that belief is an actual truth or not. If you believe that it's true, it's going to prove that to you in one way, shape, or form. So if you're expecting to be able to have this peaceful, this pain-free, this simple, this fast, this beautiful birth experience, you have to provide yourself with evidence of it being possible for you, right? And then you'll believe that it's actually possible. And you back that up with the hypnosis and the mental preparation. You back that up with the emotional processing and making sure that you're letting go and doing release work to let go of any stuck emotions or any traumatic experiences from the past, especially if you have had any type of sexual trauma or sexual abuse or anything like that in the past. What I will say is, one of the best things you can do for your birth experience is go see someone who is a professional, either therapist or coach or guide, or someone who can help you to release the pain, release the trauma around those experiences, because those experiences will hinder and can create different manifestations and complications in the birthing process, right? So that was baby number 5. So baby number 6, at the time, let's see, how many years later was Nevaeh born? 2017 to 2 years later. It's weird. My babies get spaced, except for this one, spaced 2 years apart up until this current one. But so 2019 rolls around and we decided, of course, we're going to have another free birth, unassisted birth, not even a question, right? And so we do. And it's crazy because I manifested a free photography session. So a birth photographer came in and was taking pictures for us, which was amazing. If you're able to do that, or if you're able to have a family member come and take pictures of your birth experience, it's something to look back on, because when you're a mom and you're in that experience, it's like you're in it, but it's not that you lose the memory of it, but looking back on it, it's just so valuable. So I highly recommend that. Just a little side note. So that's amazing to have that album for us all to look back on and show our family and stuff like that. But our daughter was there, our son was there, and they were really young. They faintly remember the experience. This one's going to be a lot more tangible for them, because now they're ages 6 and 8. Back then they were ages 2 and 4. But so we had another experience, and this time around I was able to have the pool. So we had an inflatable birthing pool, and I had my music, and I had my lighting, and I had the photographer, and I pretty much was able to have everything, right? And it was the speediest, just the most prompt birth arrival that I had ever experienced, right? Which is very surprising for me. I was like, wow, this is amazing. It was very intense. My baby was in a position that was giving me a lot of discomfort in my back, which I didn't enjoy that, of course. But I was able to breathe through that. And this time around, I'm looking forward to the experience, because at that point in time, this was 2019, I was in a weird place spiritually, and I wasn't meditating, and I hadn't really learned actually how to meditate at that point. I didn't know about breath work. I didn't know how to do, I knew how to do deep breathing, but I didn't know actually what breath work was, or that it was a thing. And so I feel a lot more equipped now. And I also wasn't working with any type of psychedelics, right? So now I have this experience with all of this shadow work that I've been doing, and this work with psychedelics that I've been doing, this integration that I've been doing, and these tons of subconscious reprogramming and hypnosis. And I have all of these things that I've done to really release a lot of the trauma, a lot of the emotional baggage, a lot of the energetic baggage and trauma that I had. So that way, what I'm planning for is a very smooth, a very beautiful experience this time around as well, right? And so the number one thing that I want to highlight to wrap this up is that the mind is what is directing everything. The mind and our beliefs is what's directing and inspiring everything. And if you want to change anything externally, you hear me say this all the time if you are familiar with my work, is that we have to go inside. We have to go within, and we have to change ourselves at the identity level. And we have to change ourselves. What that means is at a foundational subconscious level, right? We have to figure out, what are the programs, what are the conditioning, what are the beliefs that I have been given, and figure out, do they align with the outcomes that I want? And if they don't, we have to be willing to do the work and make the commitment to doing the work necessary to rewrite those programs and rewrite that conditioning, right? And so the advice that I would give to any woman who is, if you're listening to this and you're considering, maybe you're just considering drug-free birth, maybe you're just considering natural birth, maybe or maybe you are considering doing this free birthing stuff or this unassisted birth stuff, is that, your intuition is the most powerful thing that you can learn to tap into. It's the channel for that force. It's the channel for that intelligence. It's the communication channel for that force and intelligence that grows our baby, right? And that heals our body and does all these miraculous things. And it's also the force intelligence that will help you to birth that baby as well. And I remember for me in this last experience, the thought that kept playing in my mind was not only the one that I carried through the previous two, which was, the same intelligence that created this baby knows how to birth it, but ultimately that my beliefs are what is shaping my reality. And so that must mean that my beliefs are what's going to shape my birthing experience. And so my number one job being a pregnant woman is to, of course, take care of myself, take care of my nutrition, make sure I'm active and all these things, but also make sure that I'm tending to my mental health, that I'm doing the energy work necessary to release anything and everything that could hinder me from having the birth experience that I want. I'm doing subconscious reprogramming and using tools to rewrite the beliefs that and the conditionings that were given to me. Growing up, I was told horror stories by my mom and the birth experience that she had with me and how it was so stressful, traumatic, and she had a cesarean, I was born early, and just all these different things, right? We have to go back and find out, what is our birth, what's our programming and conditioning around birth? And then figure out, well, how do I rewrite that? How do I change that, right? And so that's something that I love to help people do, whether it's in the birth space, or if it's in around money or around relationships or around health. We have a blueprint, a subconscious blueprint, and a subconscious program for everything in our life. And so if there's any area of life that you want to change, or that you want to create a certain experience in, the first step is always awareness, finding out, what is the program around this? What is the belief system around this? What are my belief systems in pertaining to birth? What do I believe is possible for birth, both negative and positive? What do I believe happens? What do I believe I'm capable of? And knowing where you're starting, knowing where you're beginning. It's like the whole GPS thing, right? Like, you can use a GPS app in your phone to get to a new destination, right? Only if you put in your starting destination. You have to know where you're starting out at. So you have to know what you currently believe in order to change your beliefs and believe something new. You have to know, what are you going through emotionally? What are the experiences that you've had in the past that have affected you emotionally and mentally? And then be able and willing and committed to going in and doing the work necessary to release that stuff, so it doesn't affect your birthing experience, right? So what I would say and what I would leave you with here is that you are more powerful than you realize, or that you have been told, or that you even understand or could even fathom, right? And if you spend time, and if you make meditation, and you make mindfulness, and you make this inner work just as important as anything else, just as important as your nutrition, just as important as your activity, knowing that, okay, I can have a dream birth experience, or I can at least have a peaceful, natural birthing experience, or I can have the drug-free experience. If you're having to give birth in a hospital, maybe you just, you know that you don't want the drugs, you don't want the epidural and all that kind of stuff, go out and, go into the show notes, do the research on the topics and the things that come to you from watching that documentary and everything, and just know what is optional, what you absolutely need and don't need, and then make your birth plan going from there, right? But aside from the birth plan, there needs to be an internal birth plan too, right? And an internal, the way that I view it is like getting ready. You have athletes that get ready for these marathons, and you have these athletes that get ready for fights and for games and all these different things, right? And women, when we're pregnant, I really view it as if we are an athlete. Not only do we have to take care of ourselves physically and make sure we're eating the right things and intaking the right information and getting the right water and all that kind of stuff, but we also have to make sure that we are becoming an athlete of the mind in what we're thinking, what we're believing is possible for us, and doing all of this internal work, so that way we can create and manifest the birthing experience that we have dreamed of. And so what I want to say to you as a friend is that the birth that you dream of, or that you wonder if it's possible for you, that I'm going to say that yes, it is possible for you. And that the only thing you have to do is get yourself on board to believe that it's possible. And you do that through what I just explained, through overcoming whatever your current beliefs are, and then designing out in your mind what you want the birth to be like, and then aligning yourself with that experience through doing the work necessary to bring yourself there. So I'm wishing you the best in your birth. I'm wishing you the best, whether you're due in a few months, or maybe you just, you're not even pregnant, you're just listening to this. Share this with somebody that you think it could help. Share this with, if you're a dude listening to this, thanks for sticking around. Go share this with your wife or your sister or whoever might be looking to give birth in the future. I hope that this helps them. And don't forget to subscribe. And my number one intention with this podcast is to help you think differently, help you see things differently, and help you see yourself and perceive life and the world around you differently, so that your quality of life in every area, your quality of life in your being a parent, giving birth, being in a relationship, being a professional, being an entrepreneur, whatever and whoever you are and whatever you're doing in the world, my hope and intention is that listening to this podcast will help you see things differently and form new beliefs and think in new ways so that way you can go and create a new experience in life. I'll see you in the next episode.